One impulsive hug, one powerful stranger, and one huge secret about her family's past. Now everything is on the line. Fate or coincidence? See how heartbreak, hope, and hidden truths collide in this unforgettable story. The bustling crowd at Los Angeles International Airport was overwhelming. Olivia Bennett, 25, stood on her tiptoes, searching for her older brother. Her heart pounded with excitement. He had been away for months, and she couldn't wait to see him. Then, she spotted a familiar silhouette. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair. It's him. Without thinking, Olivia pushed through the crowd, ignoring personal space, and threw herself into his arms. "Oh my God! I missed you so much," she murmured into his chest. But something was off. His scent, expensive cologne. His posture, rigid. His suit, too well-tailored. Olivia slowly pulled back. The man she had just hugged was not her brother. Her stomach dropped. He was a complete stranger. And not just any stranger, he was ridiculously good-looking. The kind of man who belonged in high-end business magazines. Sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and an amused smirk forming on his lips. "Well, that was unexpected," he said, one eyebrow raised. Olivia stumbled backward. I thought you were my brother. I wasn't looking properly. It was the reflection in the glass. Emotional nearsightedness," she blurted. "Emotional nearsightedness?" he echoed, clearly entertained. "Yes, when emotions override common sense, and you see what you want to see instead of what's actually in front of you." His smirk deepened. "I see. Fascinating condition." Before Olivia could process the mortification any further, a towering security guard appeared next to the man. "Mr. Hayes, is everything all right?" Olivia froze. Ethan Hayes, the Billionaire CEO, a man who avoided publicity and rarely made appearances in the media. And she had just thrown herself at him like an overexcited puppy. "Oh no," she whispered in horror. Ethan, clearly enjoying her reaction, crossed his arms. "You look nervous." Olivia swallowed hard. "I'm afraid of embarrassing mistakes ending up on the internet." "Understandable," he said, still watching her intently. "I need to find my brother," she mumbled, "and maybe relocate to Alaska." Ethan chuckled but didn't stop her as she bolted away. However, as Olivia disappeared into the crowd, she could feel his gaze following her. And the truth was, he wasn't ready to let her go just yet. Later that evening, Olivia was back at her job at the Daily Bean Cafe, a small but busy coffee shop near downtown Los Angeles. She was wiping down the counter when an impatient customer cleared his throat. "Excuse me," the man snapped. "I ordered a cappuccino with no foam, and this clearly has foam." Olivia forced a polite smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me fix that for you." She remade the drink and handed it over, but the customer snatched it without a word of thanks. Just another typical day at work. Working at the Daily Bean meant dealing with rushed, demanding people, many of whom seemed to think she was invisible. But she needed this job. It paid the bills and helped support her younger brother, Jake. Just as she was about to take a short break, her manager, Mr. Harris, called her over. "Olivia, special order for table 12. Take it over." She grabbed the tray and walked across the cafe. But when she reached the table, she froze. Sitting there, looking completely at ease, was Ethan Hayes. He smirked. "Well, look at that. We meet again." Olivia blinked. "You?" "Yes, me." Ethan leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced on the table, eyes sparkling with amusement. "And it looks like this time you're serving me." Olivia's face burned. "I swear this isn't stalking." "If it were," Ethan said with a low chuckle, "I wouldn't mind." Her heart did a weird little flip, but she ignored it. She placed his coffee on the table. "Here's your order. Have a nice day." She turned to walk away, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." She hesitated before looking back. "Yes." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Do you always run off so fast?" "That depends." "Do you always show up at the cafe of the woman who accidentally hugged you?" He smiled. "Maybe it's fate. or an airport with limited coffee options. Ethan picked up his cup, took a sip, and kept his gaze on her. Since we've run into each other again, can I ask you something? She sighed. If I say no, you're going to ask anyway, aren't you? Absolutely. She crossed her arms. Fine. Ask. Ethan set down his cup, watching her carefully. Did you really mistake me for your brother? Or were you just in the mood to hug a random stranger? Her mouth fell open. What? He shrugged. You seemed pretty comfortable. I might feel special. Olivia groaned. I swear it was a mistake. I had no idea who you were. That's surprising. She frowned. Why? Ethan chuckled softly. Because people usually know. There was something about the way he said it that made Olivia pause. She studied his expression, sensing something deeper behind his words. Are you saying you're used to being recognized? She asked. Ethan smirked, but there was something tired in his eyes. Something like that. Olivia didn't know what to say to that, but before she could think of a response, her manager's voice called out, Olivia, you have other tables to serve. She sighed, adjusting her apron. Looks like I have to get back to work. Ethan nodded. It was a pleasure being your customer today. She hesitated before responding, then, without really knowing why, she smiled. This time, without the wrong hugs. Ethan smiled back. We'll see. And as she walked away, Olivia had the strangest feeling that this wasn't the last time she'd see him. The next day, Olivia arrived at work early. She tried to ignore the small flicker of anticipation in her chest, but as soon as she walked behind the counter, she noticed him. Ethan was back, sitting in the same seat, looking directly at her. She groaned internally. What was he doing here again? With a sigh, she grabbed her notepad and walked over. Back already? Ethan smirked. What can I say? I like good coffee. She gave him a skeptical look. Right? Ethan leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes full of mischief. Maybe I just like watching you panic. Olivia rolled her eyes. So, what are you having today? His smirk grew. I'll have whatever you recommend. Her lips twitched. Fine. But if you don't like it, no complaints. I trust you. Something about the way he said it made Olivia pause. For the first time, she wondered if Ethan Hayes was more than just a charming billionaire. And maybe, just maybe, he was about to change her life. A few weeks drifted by, and Olivia found herself getting used to Ethan's near-daily visits. He'd show up with that playful smile, order a cappuccino or let her suggest something new, and linger until the cafe buzz calmed. In short bursts, they'd chat about little things like music tastes or favorite foods, but never anything too personal. That changed the day she got a call from St. Mary's Medical Center, the hospital her brother Jake visited for routine checkups. Her heart jumped when she heard the urgency in the nurse's voice. Jake had collapsed during his last appointment, and they wanted her there immediately. Olivia's hands shook as she ended the call. She tore off her apron and ran for the door, mind whirling with dread. The moment she stepped outside, she nearly collided with Ethan. You look terrified, he said, his smile vanishing. What's wrong? My brother, he's in trouble, Olivia managed, breath catching in her throat. I have to go. Ethan didn't hesitate. Let me drive you. She didn't argue. They raced through Los Angeles traffic, Ethan weaving through cars with surprising composure. When they reached St. Mary's, Olivia darted into the lobby, heart in her mouth. A doctor led her to Jake's room, explaining he'd collapsed from a severe kidney issue. He needed treatment fast. Is he going to be okay? Olivia asked, panic in her voice. He will if we act quickly. But the costs? The doctor's voice trailed off, eyes sympathetic. She knew Olivia didn't have much money. Ethan had been standing in the hallway, close enough to hear. Without missing a beat, he offered, I can help. Olivia's cheeks flushed. She wanted to refuse, but the fear of losing Jake outweighed her pride. Thank you, she whispered. They stepped into Jake's room. Her brother, pale and exhausted, managed a weak smile. Liv, you didn't have to come flying over. I'm okay. She swallowed hard. Jake, don't scare me like this. Ethan hovered at the door, watching the siblings. Suddenly, the man she knew as a teasing, confident charmer looked serious, almost vulnerable. "Is that your boss?" Jake asked, noticing Ethan's expensive suit. Olivia shook her head. "No, he's just a friend." But as she spoke, she felt a sudden shift in her own thoughts. Was that really all Ethan was? Little did she know, her world was about to get far more complicated. Over the next few days, Jake's health fluctuated. He needed an operation soon, and the looming medical bills weighed heavily on Olivia's mind. She tried to hide her stress at work, but Ethan noticed immediately. One afternoon, after the cafe had closed, he approached her by the counter. "Hey, how's Jake holding up?" Olivia forced a smile. "He's stable, but the doctors say he can't wait much longer. It's going to be expensive." Ethan studied her expression. "Then let me cover it." She shook her head. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to owe you anything." He held up a hand. "Hear me out. I've been looking for a personal chef for a while. Someone trustworthy, who can help me with healthier meals. What if you cook for me for a month? I'll pay you enough to handle Jake's hospital expenses." Olivia's eyes widened. "That sounds like a lot of money." "It is," Ethan said simply. "And you'd be earning it. No handouts." She hesitated, considering her options. Finally, she exhaled. "All right, if that's what it takes." Relief flickered in Ethan's gaze, as if he'd been worried she would say no. "We can finalize the details later. I'll have my driver pick you up on Monday." Monday arrived faster than Olivia expected. She knocked on the door of Ethan's penthouse in a high-rise overlooking downtown LA. The interior was sleek, modern, almost intimidating. But she steeled herself. She was doing this for Jake. Ethan greeted her warmly, though she couldn't ignore the hint of nerves in his eyes. "Welcome. Kitchen's over here." The kitchen was enormous, stocked with top-of-the-line appliances Olivia had only seen on cooking shows. She swallowed, reminding herself not to let it overwhelm her. For the next few days, she prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner, testing out new recipes. Ethan would come in and watch her cook, sometimes chatting about the day's events. Other times, he'd offer to help chop vegetables, comically awkward with a knife. "You really don't cook much, do you?" Olivia teased one morning when he nearly cut a pepper the wrong way. He grinned sheepishly. "Let's just say my skills lie elsewhere." In those light-hearted moments, she almost forgot the weight of Jake's situation. Almost. But everything changed when she discovered a clue about her family's past. An old photo tucked into her apron, showing her parents standing in front of Bennett's Grill, the restaurant her father once ran before everything fell apart. She hadn't realized she'd brought it with her. Ethan noticed her staring at the picture. "That your parents?" She nodded softly. "Yeah. They used to own a small restaurant. Closed down when I was 18. Financial troubles." He considered her a moment. "I'm sorry. Do you miss it?" A flicker of sadness crossed her face. Every day. Neither of them realized how much that restaurant would come to mean again, but only after confronting some buried secrets. As the days passed, Olivia and Ethan fell into a routine at the penthouse. She'd cook, he'd taste test, and they'd share casual conversation. But every now and then, she'd catch him studying her with a look that made her heart flutter. Meanwhile, Jake's operation date loomed closer, and the bills kept mounting. Though Olivia was grateful for Ethan's arrangement, she knew this was just a temporary fix. Yet, she couldn't deny how comfortable she felt in his world, even if it was so different from hers. One evening, she found Ethan on the penthouse balcony, staring at the city lights. He seemed lost in thought. "Hey," Olivia said softly, stepping outside. "Everything okay?" He turned, surprise flashing in his eyes. "Yeah, just had a lot on my mind." They stood in silence for a moment, the cool breeze tugging at her hair. Finally, Ethan sighed. "I never really asked. You said your parents lost the restaurant due to finances. Do you know what happened?" A lump rose in her throat. "They struggled to get loans, started missing payments on everything. Eventually, they couldn't keep up with the competition. A bigger company moved in and That was it. They lost everything. Ethan's expression darkened momentarily, but he quickly masked it with a small smile. I'm sorry. That must have been tough. Olivia nodded, forcing a shrug. Life happens. We adapt. Before she could say more, her phone buzzed. A text from Jake. I'm good. Just bored. Miss you. She exhaled in relief. He's still stable, she murmured. Ethan gently rested a hand on her shoulder. If there's anything else you need. Their eyes met, and for a second, Olivia forgot how to breathe. She'd never expected to grow closer to someone like Ethan Hayes. But here they were, two people from different worlds, brought together by circumstance, or fate. They were so caught in the moment, neither noticed the flicker of worry crossing Ethan's face. He was keeping a secret, and it involved a truth Olivia wasn't yet ready to hear. Because the company that had played a hand in destroying her family's dream was tied to him more than she could imagine. The next few days were a blur of cooking and hospital visits. Olivia spent her mornings at the penthouse, whipping up meals and trying to keep her mind off Jake's upcoming surgery. Afternoons and evenings were for the hospital. Ethan quietly covered more and more of Jake's medical expenses, insisting it was part of their deal. Olivia felt uneasy accepting so much help, but there was no other choice. One night, after she returned from St. Mary's, she found Ethan sitting in the living room, scrolling through something on his phone. The moment he saw her, he placed it aside. You look exhausted, he said softly. I am, she admitted, sinking onto the couch. Jake's surgery is in 2 days. Ethan hesitated, then cleared his throat. Olivia, there's something we need to talk about. Her heart kicked up. Sounds serious. He looked torn, as though unsure how to begin. Remember how you mentioned a bigger company forced your parents' restaurant out of business? Olivia stiffened. Yes. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. That company, some of its branches, are under the Hayes Corporation. I only found out recently, and I've been trying to see if there's a way to fix what happened to your family. But I should have told you sooner. Silence. Olivia's stomach churned. You mean, your company did that? He nodded, guilt etched into his features. Not directly, but the acquisitions we made led to small competitors losing everything, including your parents. Olivia stood, her eyes stinging. So all this time, you've been paying my brother's bills out of guilt? No. Ethan rose too, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. Then why? His jaw tightened. Because I care about you. I never wanted my company's actions to hurt you. I'm trying to make it right. The weight of betrayal pressed on Olivia's chest. She wanted to believe him, but the memories of her parents' heartbreak were too raw. Olivia, please, Ethan murmured, voice trembling with emotion. Let me explain. Let me help. Her mind spun. She thought of Jake, of the operation just days away, of everything Ethan had done. And yet, she turned away, tears burning her eyes. I need time. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and left the penthouse, Ethan's pleas echoing in her ears. Little did she know, by leaving him then, she'd set into motion a choice that would either break them apart or bring them closer than ever. The morning of Jake's surgery arrived with a cold clarity. Olivia was overwhelmed. Her resentment toward Ethan still lingered, but her main concern was her brother's life. She headed to St. Mary's alone, determined to stay strong. Jake smiled weakly when she entered his room. Liv, don't look so worried. I'll be fine. You'd better be, she whispered, forcing a small laugh. Because I'm not done yelling at you for scaring me. But the clock ticked, and soon medical staff were prepping him for the operating room. Olivia paced the corridor, heart pounding. Her phone buzzed several times, Ethan's name flashing on the screen. She couldn't bring herself to answer. Before she could silence it, however, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Olivia. She turned to see Ethan, looking tense but resolute. Her instinct was to walk away, but the look in his eyes stopped her. I'm here for Jake, he said quietly. And for you, if you'll let me. She hesitated, arms wrapped around herself protectively. I can't handle this right now, Ethan. If the doctors can't save him, they will. he said firmly. I've brought in a specialist to consult. He's one of the best in the country. Olivia's eyes widened. You did that? He nodded. Jake deserves every chance. Tears stung her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. But it doesn't change what your company did. I know, Ethan murmured. And I'm not asking you to forgive me today. But I can't stay away when you need help. Words failed Olivia. Anger battled with gratitude. But in that moment, Jake's life mattered more than anything else. A nurse beckoned them over. We're taking him into surgery. You can wait in the family lounge. Ethan gently placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder as they watched Jake get wheeled away. In the hush of the corridor, she let him guide her to a small waiting area where time stretched endlessly. Hours later, a surgeon emerged. The operation was successful. Jake's stable. Relief crashed over Olivia so strongly her knees nearly buckled. She let out a sobbing laugh, pressing her palms to her face. Thank you, Ethan told the surgeon, genuine emotion filling his voice. As soon as they were allowed, Olivia rushed into Jake's room. He was groggy, but awake, a faint smile on his lips. Told you I'd be fine, he mumbled. She laughed through her tears. Don't ever do that again. Ethan lingered in the doorway, watching silently, then stepped back to give them space. After a while, Olivia emerged and found him in the hall. He's going to recover, she said, still dazed by relief. I'm glad, Ethan replied softly. They stood there, tension still humming between them. Finally, Olivia looked down. I don't know how to feel right now. You saved my brother, but I'm still the man whose company hurt your parents. She swallowed hard. Yes, a beat of silence. Then Ethan said, I know I can't erase the past, but I hope, in time, you'll see me for who I am, not just for what my company did. Olivia's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to pull him into a hug and never let go. Another part reminded her of her parents' pain. I need a little more time, she whispered. He nodded, gaze soft. Take all you need. I'll be here whatever you decide. Even as a small voice inside her whispered that perhaps he deserved a chance, she couldn't ignore the fear that forgiving him might betray her family's memory. Only one thing was certain. Her life would never be the same again. Days turned into weeks. Jake slowly recovered, regaining strength in the hospital. Olivia visited him daily, ensuring he had everything he needed. Though relief warmed her every time she saw him smile, a quiet ache lingered in her chest whenever she thought of Ethan. He stayed away at first, respecting her need for space. But little gestures kept appearing. Fresh flowers by Jake's bedside. A new phone charger when his broke. Even small gourmet snacks Olivia couldn't afford. She suspected Ethan was behind them all. One afternoon, Jake turned to her with a curious expression. Liv, why aren't you talking to Ethan anymore? She shrugged uncomfortably. It's complicated. Our family lost Bennett's Grill because of his company's acquisitions. Jake sighed. I know, but he's done so much for me, for us. Maybe it's time to forgive. Forgiveness. The word stung. Could she truly move past her family's pain? She wrestled with that question as Jake continued to heal. Finally, one evening, Olivia arrived at the penthouse unannounced. She found Ethan in the spacious living room, staring at the city lights from the floor-to-ceiling windows. He turned slowly at the sound of her footsteps. Olivia. His voice was cautious, a million questions in his gaze. She swallowed, heart hammering. Jake's being discharged next week. He's going to be okay. Relief flickered in Ethan's eyes. That's good news. They stood in silence, the unspoken tension palpable. At last, Olivia sighed and took a shaky breath. I can't forget what happened to my family, but I see that you're not that company. You're a person who's been patient and caring, and I don't want fear or pride to keep me from something real. Ethan stepped closer, his expression earnest. I never meant to deceive you. If there's any way I can make things right, help rebuild what was lost, I want to do it. If you'll let me. She studied him, tears pricking her eyes. I spent so long blaming the big guys for destroying my parents' dreams. And now I realize, the man I care about is one of them. Maybe not by choice, but by circumstance. A moment passed. Then she took his hand gently. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I don't want to lose you. Emotion flickered across his face. Slowly, he leaned in, brushing a tentative kiss against her lips. They both sighed, relief, longing, and an unspoken promise mingling together. When they broke apart, Olivia managed a wobbly smile. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. Thank you. A few months later, Bennett's Grill was reborn. With Ethan's financial support and a heap of determination, Olivia took a leap of faith and reopened her family's restaurant under a new name, Bennett's Table, honoring her parents' legacy. Jake, fully recovered, helped manage the kitchen whenever Olivia needed a break. Crowds began to gather, drawn by the story of a young woman's relentless passion and her unexpected partnership with one of LA's wealthiest entrepreneurs. And as for Olivia and Ethan, they discovered that real love could withstand old wounds. There were still challenges, moments when she'd remember her parents' struggle, or he'd grapple with corporate responsibilities, but they faced those moments together, because, in the end, mistakes and past hurts didn't define them. They were two people who found each other in a crowded airport, by accident perhaps, or maybe by fate. Whatever it was, neither would trade their journey for anything. And so, with the grand reopening of Bennett's Table and the warm laughter of friends and family echoing through the refurbished dining room, their story found its quiet, hopeful close, proving that sometimes a wrong hug could lead to the right forever.